Hey everyone, how's it going? Pocky here, and I wanted to go over a quick recap of the Lobby Legends qualifiers. They weren't streamed in a central location or anything like that, and the competitors weren't required to stream. However, there were, as far as I know, at least 13 perspectives being streamed, and I tried to tune into each one of them and to follow along, carry with the standings, and just like, I wanted to collect my thoughts, hear what other people had to say about it, what I think could be improved going forward. I know this isn't like intended to be a streamed event, but I think it could be really, really good if it was. The actual gameplay was fantastic, and first and foremost, that's the most important part if you're establishing a competitive scene, and that was there. And so I want to see what could possibly be there in the future as well. So our qualifiers from the 3 non-China servers are as listed. We had 4 from Japan: Satellite, Ponpada, Sisei, Kiraman. From Russia we have Godumit, Max 7K. Germany we had B-Nice92 and Bobafat. And Educated Collins representing America, Zoinhu representing Brazil, and Ken out of Canada. Kurt, I don't know, they qualified out the America server, but I actually am not familiar with them. So if you guys know, let me know where Kurt's from, because that'd be awesome to know. Hey, Future Pocky here. Kurt is from America, so we figured that out. You know, we have a really great representation all across. You know, we have 4 Americas, actually, for Europe and for Japan through all of that, which is really cool. It's cool to see the distribution of who was able to make it out of those 48. If you guys don't know, the Lobby Legends format is that the official tournament is 16 players, and so these 12 players will also be joining the qualifiers from China. We have Bilibili Baiyu, Chengxia Yuye Deshuanlan, along with HOF and Yoju Shijia Moru. And so those will put the 16 finalists in Lobby Legends, which will be happening on April 2nd and 3rd. One thing that I found a little odd with the setup of these qualifiers is that it was on a Monday. I know that it's not intended for viewers, but again, I think it could be. But even for participants, Monday just isn't super player friendly. I know there's a lot of streamers involved that are full-time, but for anyone that, you know, isn't, Monday's not ideal. And to go along with that, the timing was really not ideal for most. So the time zones that we saw, the tournament ran about 4 hours. On the West Coast, it started at about 5 p.m. and went to about 9 p.m. But on the East Coast, it started about 8 p.m. and went till midnight, which is a little bit late for some, not all, of course, but for some, especially for a tournament where you want your full focus. If you're starting to get tired around then, that's not ideal. And then the European hours were really kind of brutal. For Central Europe, it was 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. and for Eastern Europe, it was like 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. and that's just like the middle of the night. Is really not ideal. And then Korea Standard Time, which also includes a lot of the Japanese players are in that same time zone, started relatively normal but early, like 9 a.m. and ran till about 1 p.m. But it doesn't feel super ideal for a lot. But I having run you know, tournaments for all 3 regions myself, I know it's really difficult to accommodate, but maybe there was something better possible. You know, make it early for the West Coast, and then it's not so bad for Europe, and a little later for Asia. But maybe this is something that they're planning on rotating through, so one of the regions always has to deal with like kind of unideal hours each time or something. But yeah, this, along with it being on a Monday, seemed a little bit rough, and I know there were some participants that didn't take part because of that, and so that's something that would be awesome to see addressed going forward. The format, if you guys didn't know, started with the top 16 of the 3 servers being invited to a round of 48, and those invites just passed down the ladder sequentially, and they would play 3 games to a top cut. So the top 4 of each lobby would move on to a round of 24. They'd play 3 more games, and that's how we determined our 12 Lobby Legends qualifiers out of the joint qualifier. The scoring system was a linear distribution. So first got 7 points, second 6, so on. 1 point separating each placement. What's cool about the linear distribution here is that it actually pretty closely represents how ladder would be for a completely equal lobby. And since these players are all so good, the lobbies are relatively equal, or they should be. So having a linear distribution is really cool. That being said, having premiums or detrimental point bonuses does allow different rewarding different gameplay patterns, and can lend itself to more comebacks and oscillation in the standings, which could be a good or bad thing, and we'll get to that. With the 3 games, it felt like players didn't have too much of a chance to move their standings if they started with like a poor placement and a mediocre placement. And that can really be driven by hero selection, especially in this meta when hero picks are so polarizing, and certain heroes are very good and certain heroes are very bad. That's something that maybe is worth thinking about again going forward. Not that this was bad, and there are benefits. Like I said, when you have lobbies that are just made up of players that realistically are almost completely even, this can be a nice scoring system, and just straightforward and easy to understand. The last thing about the format that I didn't really like, and I don't know if there's a better way to address it. Obviously, these groups are seeded, so based on the placements that people were invited, they were seeded into lobbies, as shown in this graph, provided in the rulebook. So this is public info, and everyone knows going ahead of time what it'll look like. What isn't great is that there's no variation. So if you get your lobby, that's who you're going to play against for the first 3 games. And then in stage 2, the lobbies were formed by taking 2 of the top 4 of 2 lobbies and just combining them into a new lobby. So lobby 1 was lobbies 1 and 4, lobby 2 was 2 and 5, and 3 was 3 and 6. The problem with that is that means that you're playing against 3 of the same players again. So it's hard to say like, oh, well, someone's going to end up in a group of death. All these lobbies are amazing, but it would be nice to maybe see different players play against different competitors, because you get a little bit more of that variety, that flavor, and don't have so many repeat matchups. And I think I would prefer that, but it's hard to say, right? Especially there could be scenarios where a lot of players end up in one group that maybe you feel are all stronger, and that means that they don't have the same opportunities to advance. Again, what's the best way to address this? It's a little bit more challenging. Rotating groups is always harder, and it requires you to do point total based advancement, right? Because you can't just say like the top 4 of this lobby, because the lobbies aren't the same. But maybe that's something that you consider if you were to expand the number of games, which I think would be very great for pressing more skill upon it. The lower amount of games that you present players with the opportunity to prove themselves, the more you leave things up to getting good RNG, maybe a good hero choice or good shops or even just good combats, right? And that variance is more present when you have fewer games. So I think moving to more games than just the 3 would be really, really great. And maybe that's something you can consider doing if the tournament was on a weekend. So this is a overview of the results and how everything sort of played out. So on the first set, you can see the qualifiers that participated, the lobbies, and again, that's just seated as it was in the diagram shown on the last slide. And then our stage 2 qualifiers, and so those are the people that advanced. And we'll talk about that in a second. But so if you missed, this is sort of how it went. A lot of familiar names, especially like a lot of streamers that you might recognize from the English speaking, especially. You have Dog in there, you have Tyler, XQN, Matsuri's known, Kiramon's around, or at least a name that I recognize. Zoinhu's, like I said, Brazilian, and he streams Super JJ. You got to know Super JJ, right? Alucard, well placed, doesn't stream, but always well placed on the ladder, as a lot of these players are, really. Silver name, huge Russian streamer, satellite Japanese. Yep, Venus, aka Be Nice, representing there. Kevin Lin is a streamer on there, which is right here. If you don't recognize, Waterloo, again, super consistent player. Actually was one of the top players on NA, but ended up qualifying on EU just because there was some drops and ended up moving up into that 16 slot, opening up some slots on NA, just as that would have it. And that's one of those situations where maybe lobby 4 doesn't feel as good because they have Waterloo in their lobby, even though the seeding says Waterloo is more akin to like a 1 or 2 seed in a lobby, but he ends up qualifying as a 16 seed. So something there. Goddammit, a great Russian streamer, SBR, aka Sun Bacon Relaxer, or more colloquially known as Victor, there in lobby 5, along with Educated Collins, Ixty, and Lee. So a lot of recognizable names there. Max 7K also has been number 1 on EU a few times, and it's a really good player. Lobby 6 has Bofer, Ponpada, a Japanese streamer, and gotta shout him out because he's super good, and he's actually won 2 of my tourneys, so really happy to see him successful here, because he did end up qualifying to the Lobby Legends finals. Zixo's there as well. Odd Dragons, Hisei is another Japanese player. Oliash, French. Ken Canadian did qualify, and Dapido is a Taiwanese streamer. So I think almost everyone in lobby 6 streams, so really lots of recognizable names, which is really cool to see. And I'm sure that as we get more of these tournaments, more and more of these names will be recognizable, just because they'll have played before, and you'll be like, wait, weren't they awesome last month? And the answer will be yes, they were. And so these were the standings. These were the results of the games, and yeah, it's pretty interesting. Some notable ones are Goddammit did really well, but got a first here. There is an 8th, but we'll get there, right? So 12.5, only a half point behind first, which was a tie between Max 7K and Educated Collins, and Ponpada with 3 second places in the opening round. really well. Really good. And Be Nice with the 2 first and a second in that first round. Super notable. But you had a lot of players advancing here. Actually half of them even. But it took about 10 points. There were some lobbies that were more evenly distributed, and some more, obviously top-loaded lobbies. So lobby 4, you see Be Nice and Satellite took a lot of the points, and so you were able to get in there at 10. Meanwhile, lobby 6, 12 points was a tiebreaker for Zixo that unfortunately he wasn't able to advance, and even Oliash at 11.5 wasn't able to advance out of there. So some lobbies, just how the points work out, play out a little differently. And this was the stage 2, round 2, finals of these qualifiers. And the games were fantastic. One thing I noticed is Mex in tempo was really strong. And because everyone's playing at such a high level, generally tournament metas do become more tempo oriented. And I think it definitely applied here, because trying to greed even a little bit means you get so punished by these super high level players that really optimize every aspect of the game, and are making sure they're getting every stat and all the most effective stats to be able to play with more balance, right? If you have more tempo, it allows you to actually do more aggressive things if you are effective in buying that tempo. And all these players really showed that. And shout out to Goddammit for 3 first places in this round. Absolutely crazy. And we had a lot of close calls. Dog was actually really close to getting a first, which would have qualified him. And WTY Bill was only half point behind Baba Fett, and XQN only a half point behind Collins. So really close results there in the second round. But yeah, that's how we reached our final 12 out of the joint qualifier. So a few things I wanted to talk about here. So the spectators. Again, this wasn't meant to be a spectated event or even online at all. But if we're looking at competitive Hearthstone, this is such a key moment, really, where we're introducing lobby legends in these qualifiers. I mean, we went over how many recognizable names were in these qualifiers. It wasn't required to stream, and there was no official cast or stream or anything like that. So we only got to see 13 perspectives, as far as I know. I may have missed 1 or 2, or maybe there was perspectives on YouTube, but I had 13 streams open that I was following. But that's out of 48, so it's not a huge amount. Just over a quarter. And the problem with that is that when you're spectating, if you lost all of your perspectives in a lobby, then you kind of just weren't able to follow that lobby anymore. Anyways, and adding on to that, as a last minute decision, Blizzard decided to have all the players play in streamer mode. What streamer mode does is it hides the names of your opponents and yourself from your opponents when everyone's playing on it. And so basically no one could tell who was playing who. Well, the idea behind that is that you sort of discourage potential collusion. The problem with that logic is that if these players really did care about trying to, help a friend qualify by playing a little lighter or something, they still have the means to do that. Not that they should or would, but the streamer mode doesn't really prevent it. And what it does do is it prevents a lot of the strategy of tournaments of maybe you do play against someone harder, not because you want to help them, but because you're trying to knock them out for your own sake. and that can matter, right? If there's one player that you need to do poorly to be able to advance, strategically, it's nice to be able to adjust. And it matters because in certain situations, when if you just leave the game up to playing out like it would play out, that's where some of that more RNG, those RNG elements come in, where you're like, well, I didn't have control over what my opponent did really, because I couldn't make any judgments on what I should do based on who they were. If someone doesn't recognize their playstyle, which some people can recognize playstyles and some can't, especially when you're playing against different opponents. But you can't make those adjustments, and so you're sort of just left at the whim of Bob, you know. And the other question I have about the streamer mode is, how is that going to work in check format? Is that going to be enforced in the Lobby Legends proper? Because that's a really big issue if you're enforcing that in check format. If you don't know what check format is, all the players play, there's not a finite number of rounds. And so all the players play, and the first to reach a certain point threshold, for the Lobby Legends finals, that point threshold is 20 points, which equates to 2 wins and two first places and a second. But you can get there through any number of games. Once a player reaches that point threshold, they've put the lobby in check. Sort of like in chess, right? If you're in check, you're one move away from your king being captured. And what that means in the tourney format is that you're one first place away from the tournament being ended. And so if that player that has reached that points threshold gets a first, the tournament is over and they've won. And then the tournament standings, follow. So like I said, there's no finite number of rounds. Where that comes into play is if a player puts the lobby into check, every player should know who they are. Because obviously you want to stop them from getting first. If they don't have that option, I don't think that check format is the ideal format for the finals, because I personally believe that that's part of the purpose of check format, is that, people can play with that in mind. If the idea is just that they need to get first, again, it's all a little bit more random, because certain heroes are better at getting it just all kind of goes up in the air, and that's not good for a competitive format. So really curious how they address the streamer mode thing. It was frankly really difficult as a spectator, because you didn't know who else was dying, and it was hard to follow in that sense. So even though we had multiple perspectives, you could sort of place people in lobbies and figure that out, but you didn't know who else was doing what. And so I would love for them to not enforce the streamer mode rule, both in the finals and future qualifier events. The delay actually wasn't bad. Obviously the players can't really interact with chat, but that's part of the point. You remove some of the stream sniping stuff, and everyone was on a 30-minute delay. So other than maybe finding out certain outcomes beforehand, it wasn't that bad. So I don't really have anything else to say about that. I was pleasantly surprised that people were sort of able to watch and all that. And the big news is on Twitch, right? HS Esports is back on Twitch, at least for Lobby Legends, and that's awesome. Obviously, more of the Hearthstone viewership is on Twitch, and so being able to have viewers tune in on Twitch to their favorite streamers and cheer for them is great. And live standings would have been fantastic. There were people trying to keep track separately, but Blizzard definitely could have just provided a public link for people that were playing to follow along, or share, I should say, even share with their community, even if they're not streaming, because a lot of these players have people that want to root for them and cheer them on. And so, being able to follow the standings is somewhat like following a box score for traditional sports. And I think that a lot of inspiration could come from traditional sports for these events. But yeah, it would have been really nice to have official standings that were updated real time, so people could follow, or you could even, put those standings on a 30-minute delay so people could follow, but, delayed along with everyone else's stream, so you don't have any spoilers. I think that would have been fantastic, and I'm not sure I see what the reasoning would be for not doing that. And, I mean, obviously, maybe I'm missing something, and that's often the case. But I would have loved to see live standings updated for all the different players participating, streamers and not streamers. And there was a lot of good stuff. I can't stress that the level of the gameplay was amazing. It was so good. I mean, all these players super deserving. There were plays that, as I was watching along and sort of pseudo casting and just discussing and talking about, it blew my mind, right? I feel like I'm okay at the game, and there were just plays that I didn't see where it was like, whoa, that is so much obviously better, but it's really kind of hidden, the plays. And so there's a lot of that. It was really great to see, really exciting. I also think this was a good starting point. I mean, yes, the qualifiers aren't meant to be online. They're not perfect, but I can feel the good things there. And if they, the Hearthstone Esports team keeps to their word on iterating and improving the different Lobby Legends aspects, we're gonna get some really great content. And even then, this is just the qualifiers, right? Again, this wasn't meant to be online or really followed at all. So the fact that you can see those good things just from this says that yeah, good things are coming. The finals, I'm sure the production is going to be great. There's going to be super good games. And yeah, I think it's really exciting for everyone involved, and I can't wait to see the finals and the next qualifiers and next set of Lobby Legends as well, to see how things might change, how they adjust and improve on things. And I mean, if it's all executed correctly, Lobby Legends is going to be amazing. It will be so good for the competitive battleground scene. And I mean, if you're not excited about that, then what are you excited about? And yeah, the last thing here is that the next set of Lobby Legends, the cutoff for the leaderboard selections will be the end of March, and then the middle of May will be the finals, with the qualifiers happening in between those two moments. So that is really exciting. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was some of these hero stats. All the standings and the results you saw before, along with these hero selections and placements, were put together by Donnie SC, and with the help of the community. So big shout out to him, because it's great content. And yeah, so some of the things that I thought were notable, Mutinous being at 8 selections and very high placement. Mukla was also here. The two things that stick out for those two heroes is the sheer amount of tempo they're able to put out, and we talked about it earlier, but tempo really positive in these tournament metas, and Mutinous and Mukla showed that. Even able to get firsts, but also a lot of seconds and top fours, just by being able to survive through some of the high rollers, tempo out some of the would-be high rollers. You see like Millhouse and Barov down here, much lower than you might expect in these high MMR lobbies. It's because if everyone's playing high tempo and really efficiently, playing these heroes that take a little bit to get going and can end up getting tempoed out of the game and placing lower. So we did see that. Scabs and Tess both performed very well with high pick rates. So, you know, being able to steal other people's buddies, being able to steal other people's minions, especially when people tend to play into the same stuff. One of the things that you might have noticed in this meta is that tribes are really important. Tribes really determine what your end game boards are going to look like. And these high level players are all going to be able to see that from the start, right? They'll be able to see, oh, well, Beast and Murlocs are in the lobby, no mechs are in, so we're probably going to see poison in the late game. You know, Reborn Myxnas, Murlocs, Sephin, Amalgadons, like that's probably our end game boards. Meanwhile, if those two tribes are out, you know, maybe you see more mechs, maybe you see elementals or pirates with just huge stats really reigning over lobbies, and Scabs and Tess can play into the fact that more players are going to be playing similar builds. And yeah, they obviously did really well. Gallywix also super good. We see Gallywix with 3 first places. And so what this all gets to is the hero disparity is still really high, right? Gallywix is obviously a top hero. Maybe picked a few times in unideal lobbies just because that's still how strong it is. But able to type 3 firsts, which other than Millhouse, who was very boomer bust, is the most in our stats. And when you sort of combine that with the fact that there was only 3 games, hero selection plays a really, really, really big role in the results, and I don't think that's ideal. It's another argument for having more games, but you look at some of the players, Tyler, for example, first 2 games were really, really, really poor options for heroes. And when you're not able to place well in those first 2 games, then the 3rd game becomes irrelevant because of the point system, and that didn't feel great. So being able to address that, I think, would be really, really, really important. Yeah, I guess I just can't stress how disparate the heroes are right now. If you look at HS replay, I think at the top 1%, only 47 heroes even meet the threshold to be picked enough. And a lot of those heroes aren't necessarily good. And when you consider that there are 78 heroes overall in the Battlegrounds pool, it's really easy now with so many heroes available to not hit on some of those better heroes or optimal heroes. And so having your fate sort of decided by hero select screen doesn't feel great, and I don't think that's something that players enjoy. But like I said, there's still a lot of great things to take from this, and I'm really hopeful that you know, the Lobby Legends main event is just as good and exciting, and next month's Lobby Legends series is going to be iterated and improved on, because I think there's a lot of great stuff waiting for us if that is the case. So I'm excited for all of it, and I want to know what you guys think. Did you follow? Did you even know it was happening? What would you change? What did you like? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe as well. Check us out on Twitch at Pocky Plays, and thanks for watching. As always, peace.